Hello, my name is Trish Balusa. I'm a keynote speaker. I'm also a big advocate for women's rights, human rights. I'm just really passionate about closing the disparity gaps for all communities. So, yeah. And also, and most importantly, I'm really happy to be here doing an interview for Just4Women UK.
This is Just for Women UK, connecting women across borders. Who is Trish Balusa beyond what people see online or on TV?
You know what? I think first of all, I'm just a human being. But aside from that, there's a lot of interesting things about me. I am quite quirky. I'm a mother to an autistic child, so that's a big part of my life. Um, I'm quite a bit of a comedian, actually. I'm hilarious, I'd like to say so myself, and my loved ones tell me. I'm the oldest sibling in my family, so I have a lot of people depending on me or looking for answers for me, a sense of direction. I am a friend, I am a sister, I am a daughter, and most importantly, I'm just all around quite amazing, if I do say so myself.
What moment would you say changed your life or put you in the spotlight?
I would say in terms of change my life, I feel like there's two moments. I'm going to answer that question in two. The moment that changed my life was when my father passed away from COVID in 2021. I think my world really flipped upside down because although in a way I was expecting it because both him and his wife were in hospital and his partner had passed, and I was sure the moment he hears of that, he may give up. And so when that happened, my whole life shattered. I felt like a new version of me had to be reborn from that and to carry on. So that moment was really, it was really life changing. When I think about it, it's almost like it became another part of my life. I felt like I was born again in another way because grief does do that to you. And I think the moment that put me in a spotlight was when I was in Big Brother and I became quite vocal about racism and microaggression, even though I wasn't aware of the fact that the audience were viewing it and was waiting for me to speak on it. I think me finally speaking on it kind of validated a lot of Black women or Black people who had experienced what I'm experiencing and was complaining about it before I even spoke about it. But I think me speaking about it and the way I spoke about it sort of validated people, and it put me in the spotlight because it kind of became it became news, and also I was trending quite a lot. So I would say that's a moment that definitely put me on the spotlight and made me like want to look out for, and I think ultimately made me a fan favorite and predicted to win.
How did your experience on reality TV shape your career and personal identity?
So coming out of reality TV, I think what really has shaped my career and the direction which I'm going to is when I came out, I had a scandal which was no fault of mine to some extent because they were meant to be doing social media check, and they didn't really do that efficiently for me, and so I ended up having a scandal. And I think within the UK, there's a sense of being punished for speaking about racism because I think most of the people, especially white people who do indulge and have benefits from white privilege, don't want to be reminded of that. And so they really had it in for me to kind of flip the page around. And so when some of my tweets came up, some of the tweets, I'm not going to lie, were very inappropriate. But it was also a time where we were using social media quite carelessly because I grew up in that generation where we were the first to kind of like have access to Twitter and stuff like that. And we wasn't using it with a lot of care. And sometimes we'll really participate in like xenophobic wars, different races having I guess jokingly, but almost kind of bantering ourselves in a way. I would say almost using our experience to laugh it out. But of course, that's a different time. And to see those tweets now was quite a shock, especially because of people seeing who I have been into the house and speaking out against those things that was weaponized against me in a way where it was shocking for myself because I came out on a high, then suddenly it was a really big low. And then to also see like how I was failed by the welfare team in terms of support. I experienced a lot of discriminative decisions from executives. And then I realized how much there is a lot of loopholes in terms of welfare and reality TV. And being the activist that I am, I thought, you know what, this is an opportunity for me to advocate for myself because I've always kind of dedicated advocating for other people. But it's the first time I saw myself as the person who needs advocating, and I'm going to have to like kind of return that advocating towards myself. And so it fueled my passion even more for a sense of justice and equality. And so that led me to sort of taking in any sort of resources and positioning and doing stuff like filing complaints and that. And then through that journey, experiencing the hardships or the backlash of filing complaints, again, taught me a lot about the different obstacles that Black people face, or Black women in particular. And that moment, it taught me a lot more about the system and just how racism plays a part, even in decision making, or whether people decide to go through with your complaint, whether your trauma is seen as important enough to actually investigate and whatnot. And so it kind of fueled my passion even more, and it made me more curious to sort of discover exactly what are the loopholes and what is causing the loopholes. It educated me in a way, because I think I went into the house with a sense of ignorance that I would be protected by the same system that I knew. Funny enough, I knew it would discriminate against me, but to some extent, I felt safe because I was so popular. I felt a sense of acceptance, and then realizing that how quickly that acceptance will be taken away when you're not the perfect Black person. I realized how easy it is for you to be punished, even for your advocacy, as long as there's a discovery that you haven't been a flawless person in the past. And so I realized that the difference in expectations for people in other groups versus a Black woman. And so that, yeah, that just pushed me towards more advocating for myself and people who are going through what I'm going through, but also for reality TV stars, because again, there's a big loophole, because there's no union for reality TV stars. And so that kind of leaves a gap for a lot of welfare. And it makes sense as to why there's been constant welfare failures to other reality TV stars, because there's nothing protecting us, and realizing things like how exploitative a contract is, having to go back. I'm currently going through filing a civil lawsuit, but even that, just the process of that, having to do that before you do that or have to take it to court, you have to try and kind of sort it out with the companies or individuals outside of that before you take it to court. But even going through that journey of filing complaints and an internal complaint towards a broadcaster, and then escalating it to the Ofcom, and seeing just how the procedures are put there, but it's almost just a facade, like a pretend of that there is structure. But in reality, what you're essentially doing is you're going to tell a friend of someone who messed you up that their friend messed you up, and you don't know you're telling the friend until you get the response and you realize, oh, okay, the system is there not to protect me, but to protect these broadcasters and the big companies and the money companies. And I'm simply just almost like an exploited item, because I know that having trended a lot, I brought in a lot of viewers, especially a lot of Black viewers. Whenever I come across fans, they say to me, oh my gosh, that was the first time I heard a Black woman speak about racism on white media. And I heard it because my friend said, you need to watch Big Brother. There's this incredible woman on it, come and watch it. So I realized I brought in views, but in the end, despite how popular I was or how amazing I was still penalized for a past. Whereas I think my white counterparts, they got to kind of move on with their life. And so that was really detrimental for me. And it really helped shape and unintentionally made me focus in going down towards influencing policies, speaking out more, and seeing what more I can do so that this doesn't happen to anyone else.
You have evolved beyond reality TV. How intentional were you about rebranding yourself?
I felt like I had no choice but to rebrand myself, because I had a really good image, and then suddenly it was tarnished and it just kept going. And so in a way, I thought that to be able to survive this, I have to rebrand myself. I have to work on myself. And it's weird because I say rebrand myself, that's more to the public, whereas I knew who I was and I have to stay true to myself. But now I have to do things so that people understand this is who I am. It was not an act that you see on TV, because what some people may not know is the cameras roll 24/7 and there's multiple cameras. So it literally catches behavior. And so if you have any discriminative mindset, if your behavior is discriminative, it comes off on TV. Whereas if you're able to see me and see who I am, but I still have to justify myself, it really puts me back in line to the part where I realize, oh, I really do have to work twice as hard, more than my counterparts. And so, yeah, that made me become intentional about rebranding and being firm on who I am, so there is no confusion.
What challenges did you face after reality TV?
I would say it's mainly my mental health. My mental health declined quite a lot. I did end up getting diagnosed with PTSD. I think, like I said, I was quite naive and ignorant as to how in the TV world it's just normal for people to mess you over. And I couldn't understand why this is a normal thing and everybody just accepted it. Whereas I'm all like, no, I'm not going to accept this. And so that was a really big challenge for my personality, because I'm usually the type of person that push back when I see an injustice. But at some point I was thinking, maybe this is bigger than me. I cannot take this on. And then there was the other part of me that's like, every challenge you've taken on always seemed bigger than you. And so you have to push through. So it was really, or it is really difficult having to push through despite having a declining mental health and having something like PTSD, which kind of plays with your sense of reality. And sometimes it makes you have to question yourself, like, was it really that bad? Or was it just I'm exaggerating it in my head because of the diagnosis? So having to constantly battle myself internally in order to make a decision that would influence the external has been one of the biggest challenges I have faced. But also, when you get caught up in backlash and constantly having negative messages, you almost put aside the positive messages you're getting, because I think it's human nature to kind of focus on the negatives because you can improve that. Whereas if you're looking at the positives, you feel like I've reached my peak. There's nothing I need to do. It made me realize I have a lot of work to do to sort of overcome and turn this around. And so that's been a really big challenge, to kind of have to overcome the negative voices in my head, because at some point I found myself picking up the negative voices and how they spoke to me and then speaking like that to myself, which doesn't do any good to my mental health. So having to constantly go through therapy in and out. I'm on my 4th round of therapy right now, but it's taken a lot, and my self-esteem really took a hit. And I almost judged myself a lot because I felt like I was being pathetic for being impacted by it. But at the same time, I knew I needed help so that I can overcome this. So that was a really, really, really big challenge. And having to navigate that in a public eye, because you know people are watching. Half the people are hoping you fall down and stay down, and half the people are kind of rooting for you. And I always say that sometimes my motivation is spite. You know, I'm like, oh, you know what? Because I want to spitefully succeed, I'm going to use that motivation to keep going, because I don't want the people who are watching me and want me to fall to get what they want. So that's been kind of hard, just navigating all of that.
What advice would you give to African women trying to find their voice?
I think the best advice I could give to women who are trying to find a voice is that it is a journey. It's not something that you just decide, I'm going to find my voice and you find it. I think it's a journey. Firstly, make your goal. If your goal is to find your voice, understand that. But when you decide that, you're not going to instantly find your voice. You have to be intentional and you have to be courageous. You have to have audacity to decide, today I'm going to speak out. Today I'm going to do this. And it's one step at a time. I think there's a African proverbs that says even the longest journey starts with a single step. And that's what it really is, because finding your voice to its full extent, like I said, it's a journey. And in different stops, you're going to find different tones of your voice. And in different stops is going to take you in a different directions. So be patient with yourself, but keep going one step at a time. Eventually you start finding yourself, you start finding your voice, you start being more courageous, and you start finding a village and a community who can resonate with you. And you know, you'll be surprised at how many people will message you and say, hey, that thing you spoke about, I can really relate to it. That also boosts your confidence when you know that you are not alone. But it's also understanding that even when you feel alone at your loners, you are never alone. There's so many people who can relate to it, but they just don't have the platform to speak up. And a lot of them haven't tapped into that audacity to speak up. And so you coming out at the forefront and being able to be vulnerable, you have to overcome shame, because shame will hold you back. You can understand that I feel a sense of shame, I feel embarrassed, but despite what I feel, I'm going to keep going. That's something that really pushes you. So understanding that finding your voice is not a one-stop journey, it's many steps, but you have to be audacious enough to take that first step. And there's going to be times where maybe the 5th step you buckle and fall, but that's okay, because that's part of the journey. When you fall, what do you find on the floor? You may find a sense of you may find something that kind of keeps you going, something that boosts you, something that motivates you. And so like really tap into that. And whatever your beliefs are, understand there are always signs that the universe or God, whatever your religion is, they are always sending signs to us and taking that on with you. And there's going to be even hard times through that journey, but it's about keeping going. But also understand there's times where you may need to take a break. You may need to say, you know what, this is overwhelming for me. I'm going to take some time out. What I found myself doing quite a lot, because I was triggered by social media quite a lot, especially just seeing where my mates are going and how they're doing great, and thinking, oh my gosh, I've messed up. That can hold you back. But it's about saying, you know what, maybe I'm going to take a social media break. I would constantly take social media breaks just to kind of like recharge myself and come back, understanding that my journey is personalized to me and it can look very different to everyone else. The lessons I've got to learn is my own, and eventually I'm seeing more of where I'm going as I go along. You will not be able to see the end when you start, but eventually you start to get a clear picture of where you're going, and also start to get options of where you could go. So yeah, keep going, have audacity, overcome shame, and yeah, just understand taking a break is normal.
Has fame affected your relationships with family and close friends?
Yeah, I think shame. I think fame that definitely always affects it in one way or another. There's a way where you can affect it negatively, where you see people who were not really in tune with you suddenly want to come and kind of associate themselves with you, or want to find out information and gossip, because it's quite interesting. We want to know what happened. I used to talk to this housemates, and so they can that they have motives that are not very sincere because they want that associations to you. But then at the same time, it also can strengthen a lot of relationships where people are also, they become really protective of you. I think in particular, me and my mother's relationship, we got really close because it was one of the first times that I saw my mum act like a mummy bear. She became almost like a lioness and wanting to protect me. Because before that, it almost seemed like as an African mom, she's like, oh my gosh, my first daughter, she's a feminist, she's a single mom. It's just like such a big taboo. But and you know, African moms, they always think, what will people say? What will people think? So I think it changed a lot for her to see me in the house and see me so loved by people, so accepted, including her friends and her colleagues constantly come back and say, your friend, your daughter is amazing. It gave her validation. And so when my mental health started deteriorating, she was like, no, you are amazing, you are loved, you are as you are. She almost started pushing me to be myself, whereas before it was a kind of trying to get me away from being that personality. She became more encouraging, more protective, and yeah, it brought me and my family closer. Some of my friends, you know, became more active in checking in my mental health. Especially, I have a lot of friends who work within the mental health sector, and they could see how much it was impacting me. They really became a village to me, and they made sure that I know that they are there for me. So yeah, it has strengthened my relationships with people, and also it's brought me some more friends. People who I'd never know would reach out to me and say, hey, I saw what happened, I feel like you need a friend, would you like to talk? It showed me the goodness in the world whilst I was seeing the ugly in the world. So yeah, I would say it impacted my relationship with the world overall.
To people facing racism around the world, what would you tell them?
Push back. It's not easy, and there's a lot of fear. And sometimes the fear can come from inside the house. I know that when I first said I wanted to put in a complaint, there was even my loved ones that were like, oh, you've been through a lot and your mental health is not great. Maybe this is not something you should do because this is big, you know. And if you're not determined, or you're easily frightened by something scary, you can back off. And then that becomes a pattern for the systems who are doing it to keep doing it, because they thrive upon that, on your fear, on your hesitance. And so sometimes you have to push back even to the people inside the house. And so I had to tell a lot of my loved ones, listen, what I need from you is support. What I need from you is encouragement. Even at times where it seems like it's a lot for me, if I come to you, allow me the safe space to be able to offload that without discouraging my whole goal. You know, ask me, how can I support you? And then I could give you an answer, or we can navigate together how to best support me. But it's really important to have to overcome that fear. And sometimes when you can be crippled by that fear, take a moment, think on it. But if you have a goal and you want that goal to become a reality, you have to push through. And sometimes the first people you will have to push through is the people on the inside, because they're the first people that you will actually declare your initiatives to. And so sometimes they can project their own fears onto you. And so you have to be mindful of that. If the fear that you're feeling is actually your own or is someone else's fear, and be able to differentiate. And either way, you have to overcome fear, whether it's your own or other people's. There's something that my dad always used to say to me after every phone call. Okay, courage, mama. Courage, mama. That means just have courage. He was big on that. And I had to find myself really tapping into having courage, because courage is not the lack of fear, it's overcoming despite that fear, and fear is always going to be there. And so having to go through that fear, accepting it, sitting in it, analyzing it, and then doing the best that you can do to overcome it. Because as you go through it, you realize that doors are opening that you didn't even think were unlocked.
What is the future for Trish Balusa?
Oh, that's a really good question. I wish I could tell you straight away. I can tell you what I'd want. Again, I'd like to give myself options, and this is the options I see myself going down. I already see that I'm already influencing policies and stuff. Recently, this year, I was actually invited to Parliament because some of my experience that I spoke about when I was facing homelessness with my childhood neurodivergent, it's been taken and put into a book where they're proposing policy changes in how they navigate homelessness with family with neurodivergence. And a lot of the suggestions in the policies come from my experience. And just to see that, it was quite powerful. So I've understood how much my voice, how much of a big part my voice can play in shaping the experience of others. But also at the same time, I love journalism. I love documentary. I love discovering stuff, learning stuff. So I'm really hoping to go into like journalism and documentary and speaking about life and discovering like psychological aspects of things, how things impact people. I've also got experience with the mental health sector. So it's kind of like just merging all of them and coming together and creating, I guess, a new role for myself. And I already see myself going down that way. So I'll say that's what I'd want ideally, going into journalism that shifts policies and changes the world and also exposes systematic disparities and biasness.
Thank you for watching Just for Women UK.